You're listening to the Faith Breathed Hope podcast, episode number 157. Today I speak with founder of Believe Crew and a coach for coaches, Jamie White. Jamie empowers entrepreneurial coaches and consultants to build the businesses of their dreams as they accept and see their God-given gifts and talents. Today's topic, no degree, no problem. Welcome to the Faith Breathed Hope podcast, where we gain inspiration and motivation from others who share their touching stories of renewing hope and discovering purpose in any circumstance. I'm your host, Christina Reisinger, and today we will be encouraged by another tremendously inspirational topic that will embolden you to release fear, begin taking small steps forward, and move into your God-given purpose to live and serve in this life. Join me for today's story. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Faith Breathed Hope. I'm here today with Jamie White. Hey, Jamie, how are you doing?
I'm awesome. Thanks for asking.
I'm so glad that she is here, and we have a really good episode coming up for you today. The first thing I'd like to do is have Jamie share something. If you would share something that maybe not everybody knows, something that might be shocking, surprising, interesting, I don't care. We'd love to know about you.
All right. Well, personally, I am a mom of 6 boys, and I had all of them at home. So home births, and 3 of them were water births. And we're currently unschooling our children. So that's something that has been a fun journey. And then the other thing that comes to mind is that my husband and I have a podcast ourselves called Business Addicts, but it's not really about business. It's because my husband was a former addict. And so what is it like going through the process and really talking about addiction and the reality of it? So that's a little bit about me.
Oh, well, thank you so much. You and I have talked a little bit about homeschooling and unschooling, and I'm super excited to dive deeper into that at some point. But today we're here to talk about business. So the show is about hope and finding hope and trusting God to just looking at God for all things in our lives, not just the fact that we go to church and we pray, but we teach our kids to pray, all the things, reading the Bible, but it's learning to depend on the Lord in all situations. And that includes family life, that includes work life, all of the things, friendships, relationships. And today we're going to talk about business, and the title is No Business, No Problem, which is something that came up in a previous conversation that we had. So I'd love for you just to dive right in and talk about what that means from the get-go. And then let's see how people think about that. Like, how can we go into business when we don't have any type of a degree? Because isn't that what we have to do? We have to go to school and we have to learn all the things before we can get a job, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I just want to mention, you had mentioned no business, no problem, but I think you meant no degree, no problem.
Did I say that? Yeah. I'm so sorry. Yes, I did mean no degree, no problem. I came back to it and said something about the degree. Yes, guys.
Yes.
Degree, no problem. But you may have no business, and that might not be.
Yeah, that was like, actually, maybe we could go there too. So all the things kind of come to mind, when I think about this idea of no degree, no problem. What would it look like if we did not have letters after our names? What did it look like if we didn't look for a certificate of approval from someone else? What would it look like if we had to only ask ourselves, am I enough? Am I okay? Do I already know enough? Am I already just being enough, who I am? And so I love to think about the idea of if we're at a funeral and we're there to support our friends, and it's not like you can really do anything to fix the problem. Bringing a gift doesn't really help make it better, but yet we still show up. And I think the reason is because who am I being? Who do I represent when I'm giving that person a hug or a handshake or just, really showing up, showing support? It's because of who we're able to be and not what we're able to do. And I think that same thing applies when we think about, our professional lives, whether it's a business or, in a work environment, in a different capacity. And like, just what would it take for us to not look for that external validation of, I love learning. Don't get me wrong. My kids and I were playing Dominion this weekend online. We actually found out that we can play Dominion.games. And so my one son is in the Army and he's, doesn't have a lot of freedom. And so we jumped on and we were able to play. And I realized the reason he loves Dominion is because every single game is a different game. Like you can't even repeat it. And so that there's that learner, that person inside of us that always wants to learn something new. And yet how do we come from the perspective of, I want to learn, I want to grow, and I want to be inspired, but yet not necessarily look for the degree. I don't know. That's the perspective that I'm coming from right now.
Right. And then there was so much in what you say with that, because I know that almost everybody has thought to themselves, am I enough? It might not be in a business situation, but it could be in a relationship. It could be with a parental relationship, a motherly or fatherly relationship. It could be with a sibling or a boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it may be. And it also could be in school or, maybe a sport or whatever it is that we're doing. And so, even if we had that confidence at one point, something may happen to like make us doubt or whatever. And say, am I enough? And so many people think that. They may not voice that because a lot of people are too prideful to voice some things. But I would be willing to bet that comes across a lot. And so the fact that you made the point of having those letters behind your name, there's something about that. And especially for certain generations where you come in and that, hey, I went and I had an education and I have this information behind my name, and this is what gets me into having a job. This is how I make money. This is how I support my family. What am I without that? So can you delve into a little bit more of, how do you know who you are? How do you know if you really are enough?
I love this. And I think a little bit, as you're asking some of these questions about, some of the things that I've heard over the years, like do this, it looks good on a resume, like when I was interviewing multiple people, I often got to the point where I didn't even look at the resume. Like I actually, for a couple of times, sometimes I booked everyone that was interested or I would give them an assessment and then give them something to do. And if they would do that, then I would interview them. And I found that so often it's hard to, really represent who we are on a one-page document, right? But what if we kind of shed some of these beliefs that we've been hearing, some of the voices that have said, that looks good on a resume, you should do that, you would be good at that. In some ways, those could be our like a coach for us, like teachers or people that believed in us. And yet at the same point, they could be coming from their experience where, maybe they're not truly seeing what's really possible. Maybe we're an artist, but they think that we need to be a scientist because, scientists get better jobs or engineers get better jobs or something like that. So first, I would say what I love to do is have people, and this sounds super simple, but figure out what your core values are is a starting point. I remember the first time I did my core values, and I actually recommend doing it more than once. So if you've even done it already, because it's sort of just starting the idea of like, who am I? And recognizing I actually have my own set of core values. And I know for me, one of the biggest things to overcome was when I got married, I sort of thought that we needed to merge in a way where I wouldn't have my own set of core values. I don't know why I thought that. It wasn't a conscious thought. But when I'm doing my own core values, all of a sudden I'm like, wait, I'm an individual. And like, I'm not, mom, married person, spouse, like, wait. And even like daughter, all the roles that we've been given, they don't necessarily define who we are still. And so the core values was one of my first, pieces of awareness, and then some of the personality assessments out there. And a lot of times when I talk to somebody, they're like, oh yeah, I took that years ago, but really digging in and saying, if I am this person, what does this mean? And there's one out there called Gallup's Strengths Finder. I usually just do the top 5 to get started. And I've had people, when I've been working with clients, that I've asked them to highlight the things they don't think are true. Now, these are our strengths, right? Mm-hmm. These are things that we've decided we love about ourselves. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes they would highlight things that were beautiful parts of them that they couldn't see. Mm-hmm. I could see it. Mm-hmm. I was like, actually, you are this person too. So what is behind, the feeling that it's not okay to be fully, it's like the word inspiring. I wanted to be able to describe myself as inspiring 5 years ago. And I realized that I thought it would mean I had a big ego. Yeah. And yet the people that inspire me are some of the most humble people, So I just really encourage using personality assessments. Personally, I know and recognize that this is one of the gifts that God has given me, to be able to see people's potential and then be able to speak into them. I see these gifts and talents in you. And then usually I use personality assessments to kind of line them up and to help them recognize where they're not being true to themselves. Because if you line up these 3 or 4 assessments and we're getting like different results on each one, it's possible that maybe there's an area where it doesn't feel safe for you to be truly you and true to you. Mm-hmm. And, anything from, I was talking to someone one day recently and I said, okay, let's pretend for a moment that it's safe, that you don't have to have anybody else's approval, and it's safe for you to be able to influence others and fully step into your gifts. I'm like, what would you wear differently? And she's like, I would be wearing teal boots today instead of black boots. Like, just that small difference of like, what does it take for us to give ourselves permission,
Right. Yeah, I think it is such a struggle for a lot of people. And like you said earlier, we may identify as a mom. All right. What happens when our kids grow up and I'm not at that point right now. I don't think you are yet either, but say they grow up and now they've left, and you hear about how couples have a lot of issues. Again, I'm not there yet, but they have issues because they don't really know what to do after the kids leave, because they've been mom this whole time. What if you grew up thinking you were this person because you have this job and you lose your job? So you have to know who you are beyond that. And earlier today, I was reading in Psalm, I think it was in Psalm, please forgive me, I have to post the actual scripture here in the show notes, because we read through several different books. But the first one we read were in Psalms, and we were talking about how, who we are in God, and we were discussing how people, how come, I think it was in Psalms, because David said, how come you care about people, basically was his question. And if you really want to go back and look at it at this point, before I should post it, which will be under there, I think it was in 8, I'm gonna say maybe Psalms 8, and he's saying, why do you care about people? Because you're all powerful. You made the angels, you made the stars. And, my son, who's not quite 12, he pops up and he says, because we're his creation. And I said, do you know what, son, that is so true, because he cares about every one of his creations. He cares about the stars. He cares about, the angels, the supernatural beings. They're his creations. But he also, we're told that he cares about the birds of the sky, that he cares about the flowers, and how much more, if he cares about them, does he care about us? And it all goes down to the fact that he created every one of us. And so he cares about you just because he created you. And that is who you are. You are enough. And when you seek his face, you will get that confidence that you need to go into all the things. So a lot of times I think people don't have that confidence because of that label is not there. They don't have that experience. I know that my husband got out of the military, and so we were looking for jobs. Well, I wasn't looking, he was looking. And, they have all the qualifications when you go to Indeed and all that. And he said, well, I don't have a degree here. I don't have I don't have this many years of experience. And that's because he gave the military, all his years of experience. But the thing is that he could do all the things that they were asking, all the things that they were needing, but he didn't have that label behind his name for those things. And he had done much more than that. But I think the computers now, they separate the applications so that the real people don't even see. And you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I don't even think that the real people see a lot of these applications going through. So like you said, that you wanted just to take the people in and get to know them and figure out who they were rather than reading that little bit on paper so that you had better judgment of that. I love that because it's personal and you really know who somebody is rather than what the paper and the computer are telling you.
Yeah, I'm sure with AI software today, it's getting probably even faster and faster, 300 applicants for certain jobs. I'm sure they're sending it through, some kind of AI software that says, does it have this, this, and this in it? And so in some ways, you could say it's probably going to become more challenging. But also what I found is that people, we've been created with this need for connection. And so I think that there are always systems, like I'm teaching my kids to look for the back door opportunities. How can you connect with somebody? And I think there's statistics out there on, how many jobs are actually done, like say through a recruiter, where the recruiter is, talking to the person and then informing the company and saying, hey, this person would be a good fit. Or circles. I've seen so many people get hired because they know someone, not because of, what their resume looks like. So again, kind of not to say that people aren't being hired based on a resume, but I just want to acknowledge that there's another huge percentage that is not, that it's about who or, just being willing to put yourself out there in a way. I know someone that doesn't have a high school degree or diploma, and he's worked his way up in a company, and so now he's in ordering or management or whatever, and he doesn't even have a high school diploma. Like, it is possible, but it's who we surround ourselves with. I grew up with an entrepreneurial family that most of them barely made it through school, and they were all doing fine financially by the time I was old enough to know that there was a difference,
Right.
So.
What was it? Who was it that said that quote? If you judge a fish by the way he can climb a tree, is that the quote? Was it Einstein? I don't remember, but
I love that idea.
But basically, you have to look at the person and who they are and how they were created and what their specific gifts are, and find their value that way, because you could be missing out big time. Like if you're somebody who's hiring, you can be missing out big time on someone who could really be an asset to your company or to your business. So we've established that there's no degree, no problem. So what does that mean? Does that mean that, hey, I decide I just don't want to go to college? What do? I don't want to work at McDonald's, or no offense to any, other things, but I don't want a fast food type of job. I want to maybe be an entrepreneur. What do I need to do? Besides obviously mindset, because we established that it's a mindset thing. It's a challenge of knowing how you're valued and what your identity is. But what else can you do? Make it no problem.
I love this question. And personally, there's also a guy that wrote a book called Change Your Circle, Change Your Life. And I think that piece of there's been a sentence that's been good for me, and it's embrace loneliness and reinvent yourself in the process. And the circles that I was brought up in, the circles that I was in and surrounded by, I didn't necessarily have a choice in those circles, right? When we're first growing up, we don't choose our circles because they're kind of chosen for us. But then at what point do we say, I'd like to choose my circles? I'd like to choose the people that I'm influenced by, or that, and I think we start in different ways to choose those, but do we really make a proactive decision in our professional lives to say, and I think even going to schools, picking the schools that you might go to get degrees, or being in communities, even the military, we're choosing who we spend our time with. And those people really influence us, because that's where, we're free to share ideas or thoughts, or, vent. And so I like to help, in Believe Crew, we have multiple coaches that work for us. And so I help them with this too. And in this idea of who are your power partners that you need to be connecting with on a monthly basis, people that help you think differently, that kind of really believe in you and your potential, and then challenge you a little bit. Some people that maybe, or connect you with other people in their systems and circles. So one piece of it, in addition to, like with my kids, I really encourage them to find their mentors. Sometimes you don't even have to talk to your mentors, but like a podcast like this, someone that inspires you to think differently. I don't know about the rest of you, but I've been inspired by many people on podcasts or books, and I don't even have to talk to them on a regular basis. But learning from them on a regular basis, right? Without a degree, without a certification. So that's one thing, is like getting clear on who are the types of people that you want to learn from and have as mentors, even if you're not jumping on a call with them every month. And then also, again, what I encourage my kids is pick something that you want to get really good at. There's this idea that if you want to become basically the best in the world at anything, if you spend an hour a day studying it, right? It doesn't matter. And so I have no interest in being a pianist or, some, like, I would not make a good person that plays an instrument. Like, it's not even worth spending an hour a day. But if I get to pick it, what would I pick? I love it.
That's so funny that you mentioned that, because as we're talking, my daughter decided to start playing the piano downstairs. Yes, for a second. So, but we're in the same place, because we homeschool as well. And so my son just started playing the guitar, and I have 3 kids at home. And so the older one did play the guitar. Now the middle one is starting to play. He's played the piano and that kind of thing. And she's never had music lessons because she dances. And but they all teach each other, which is so cool.
Yes.
And one of the key things that the guitar teacher told him was, we have to practice. Practice is key. And so I love it when I don't have to, make them practice, that they just do it because they want to. Maybe not so much on the interview, but
right.
But it's okay. And that's the life of living at home with your kids all the time. So I did want to say real quick that quote is, everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it live its whole life believing that it's stupid. And that is Albert Einstein. So that's
so deep and so good.
It is, because when you look at somebody and you have expectations of them that are not within the realm of their ability, and I don't want to say ability, because we can learn things, we can persevere, we can have motivation, those kind of things. But I mean, in their realm of talents, I guess I should say, gifts. When we work, can you talk about that a little bit though? So like we talk about making sure that we go through these things and we dedicate ourselves, we practice this kind of things. What about the operation of our gifts, working in the things that come naturally? Because I think a lot of times people don't believe that the things that they can do, they think it's too easy and that everybody knows, how to do it. So they might as well not do anything because it's not worthwhile. Can you speak to that at all?
There's so many things that come to mind with that. So one of them is, I've often heard, when people are starting a business and they're struggling to charge for their value because it's something that comes easy to them, there's that side of it. And then there's another side of people that have believed that God doesn't want us, like if something is easy, like we need to work hard, more of the belief that, it's going to be, life is going to be tough. And so there have been a couple of different ways where there's belief systems that we hold subconsciously. Maybe someone told us, or, maybe we heard along the way, or maybe we just took it, in the wrong way. Maybe it wasn't even meant that way. And so what if, I know we've been talking a little bit about verses, and there's a verse that says that we've been fearfully and wonderfully made. So, and then there's these verses that talk about the spiritual gifts. And so what would it look like if we said, I'm called to work in my spiritual gifts. Here's another thing that's come up when I've asked people that. They've said, well, I'm not called to make money. God doesn't want us to make money off of our spiritual gifts. Like, that's just how I'm called to serve. I question that. And I ask, how is that possible? That he wouldn't want us to be working primarily in our gifts and talents? And does it really make sense that we would do something we don't enjoy? Like, that's how you make money, is to do something you don't enjoy and you're not working in your gifts and talents. But the way that you outside of work, serve God is in your gifts and talents, and you give that away for free. Maybe this isn't the way everyone thinks, but these are some of the things that I've heard as I ask people, do you know your gifts and talents? Do you know your God-given gifts and talents? And so I'm not sure if that answers your question yet, but just kind of starting the idea of, how can I be so clear on who I am and how I'm called to serve? Like, in my team, we really work hard so that everybody knows. We take personality assessments, everybody does. And we kind of check in, like, what do you think your God-given gifts are? And what we find is that as we allow people the space to explore who they are, and it's safe, to say, hey, do you want to try and learn this? Or what pieces do you want to learn? Because I like to look at it I like to run the company from the perspective of, this is the big overall vision. This is where we're going as a company. This is where we're called to. Who you are in the process, like, I want you to be so true to you that, and what we found is that there's so much confidence that's built in that when they get a chance to practice and fail, or when I'm not good at it and I can say, that is not my lane, you need to talk to the other person, then we tend to pick up and even get more confidence in the areas that we've been given a chance to be and to explore. So in my areas, I'm the idea person, I'm the big thinker, I'm the, let's have lots of conversations. And if you want something detail oriented or to be done right, please do not call me. Please call someone on my team. I'll get you close enough. But anyway.
Then you'll go further with the execution, somebody else's gifts and talents. I really do think that all works together, because like we said, if we are confident in our identity and who we are in God, and we know our gifts that he has specifically given to us, then we can fulfill the purpose that he has given us in working through those gifts and talents, and we can hear him in that area. So it does come down to, who am I? Am I enough? Am I able to do these things when the expectations of other people tell me differently? There's a lot of that people pleasing in that, it's because everybody's always done it this way, that has to be this way. You can't walk outside of the box. And entrepreneurs are notorious for going outside of the box, which is why I like that as well, because I always felt like I was a square peg in a round hole kind of a person. And maybe that's where we can shine, is where we can just stand up and say, hey, this is me, this is how I do it, and I don't need a degree. Now, that doesn't mean if you're going to be a doctor, you don't need to go to medical school. That is not saying that at all.
Correct.
What it does mean is that, if you have a will, if you are seeking God's face, that he's going to help you move forward in that, and you can do more than you think you can with it.
That's so beautiful. I think a little bit of my husband, who used to be in data, and anything in that software world, IT, tech, there's plenty of good jobs out there. And he was called there for a while, and he was really good at it. But as we started to really uncover more of who he was actually a healer. And we didn't know it, because his family, that would not have been acceptable, and even in our circle at the time, it's not acceptable to say, I'm actually a healer. And so, in society, to go from like, I'm a data guy to I'm a healer, it just feels like this crazy transition. And yet the more he stepped into who he was capable of being, the more he showed up present, the more he, stopped with some of the coping mechanisms that he had. Like I said, I mentioned in the beginning, there's a podcast that talks a little bit more about some of our story, but addiction, what we found, is the opposite of connection. And really, he needed to be so connected to who he was and his gifts, and connecting to other people, and being in IT, he didn't need that, right? So it was the opposite. And so it's been a huge journey, and yet it's so worth it. Like, I would encourage anyone that is just wondering. And there's actually a book, I'm not sure if it's called The War of Art or The Art of War, but it is, who's it by? Someone Pressfield. And then the second book is Turning Pro. And in the second book was the one that I had kind of the wake up call, because it said, are you living a shadow career? Like, is this really, but the first one, is really, really good. Also, I've heard some people that really, Stephen Pressfield. Sorry.
Yeah, it's The War of Art.
Yes.
Yes, you're right. Have to look that up. Yeah, I know that it is difficult for a lot of people to stand in who they are, and against who they're told they should be.
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference, and there's a shift in that where you say, hey, this is what I was told I should be. This is what I know God has made me to be.
Yeah.
And that does not equate to rebellion.
Right.
That might sound rebellious, especially if you're talking about what your parents wanted you to be. I'm not suggesting that you rebel against your family or anything like that. But like you said, when we stand in those talents, when we start serving in those talents, whether it's in ministry or business, or just around our family, that's a ministry as well, and our friends, then God is going to come through and show us, and then we have more of the confidence that we need to continue on, and people learn. It's really God using us, I think, as a vessel, so that other people can say, hey, you know what? I see it, and I want to be that, or I want to do this, or I want to have that for myself. And God says, hey, here I am, listen to me, I can work through you as well. So do you have anything else, Jamie, that you want to, I don't know, I dare say advice. I don't like the word advice necessarily, but maybe any encouragement for the audience in this area of, maybe somebody is in the place where they've had this expectancy of who they are. Maybe it's from other people. Maybe it's even just for them, because we can be really hard on ourselves. Do you have any encouragement for them? And, what would that be?
I love that. So there's a question that was asked of me a couple of years ago. And at first I didn't want to answer the question. I was like, no, because the question was, who do you envy? And my first reaction was like, me? I don't envy anybody, and then I was like, wait, let's just answer the question without giving it any meaning. And I realized that there were some things that I wanted to write down, that I was feeling this, like, I want that. And what I've since become aware of is that I believe that those are the whispers that God gives each of us individually. And sometimes we tamp them down, either because of other voices or this feeling of, it's not right to be envious. But what if that's the whisper of God just saying, I'm calling you to something similar, and I need you to see it. I need you to see more, see what else is there. For me, that idea of, like, who do I envy was a question that was painful to answer. But when I did, I actually got so much more clarity for myself in where God was calling me. And it's part of where Believe Crew came from. I knew that there were these other people that had these groups of people working with them, and they were, making a difference in people's lives. And at the end of the day, that was the whisper to my heart. But I just thought, I thought that, I shouldn't envy somebody else. So that's one piece of thought, is like to listen to that whisper that maybe feels like it's wrong. And the other piece is, we really, again, going back to the embrace loneliness and reinvent yourself in the process. When we're going through this transformation in our lives, this work of transformation, the person that we become and the person that we're becoming may look crazy to the people around us. There is probably something that God is asking us to do that does not fit into social standards or societal success models or anything like that. But there is a reason that he is calling us to each of these individual places. And when we really look at where Jesus was called, it wasn't always the pretty places. And so I can only express, I don't know that I can express enough to really be clear on who I was and who I am. I really had to start being able to say no to people that were close around me. And so I started with a growth and a maintenance list, and making a list of who are my growth friends and who are the people that I need to spend a little less time with. And that was the beginning. So encourage anyone that's on this journey and wants to get more clear with themselves to consider their core values, to look at who are your growth friends, who are your maintenance friends, and listen to that whisper of where is it that you're feeling. I'll give you an example. This might sound crazy, but there's someone I talked to recently, and he's like, I know that I'm going to have a Porsche in my life, or, some higher end car, which is not in my life. And I drive a 9-passenger van with our 6 kids, And so I'm like, go you. And I said, chances are he is calling you there, but it might look crazy and it might not be the way you think it's going to be, right? Wherever he's calling you, it's not going to look the same way in the end that you think it's going to look in the beginning, but there's something about it that is true. And I would love for everyone to explore that and see that.
Yeah, definitely. You have to open your ears, and you have to listen, but you have to be willing to understand and to hear what God wants, and not the things of this world. And sometimes I think people get confused of what that inspiration is. Maybe it's not envy, maybe it's inspiration.
Exactly.
The scripture clearly says we're not supposed to envy, but we can be inspired. And it also says we should be encouraged. We should be encouraging to one another. So, Jamie, can you tell everybody where they can find you and all the good stuff?
Thank you for the invitation. Again, it's been great to have this conversation with you. And anyone that's looking for a conversation with me, I am completely open to that. I can be found at BelieveCrew.com. Of course, online. My name is Jamie White, so that is not something that you can Google very well. But if you Google it with Believe Crew, usually I'll pop up, and I'd love to have a conversation.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for being on Faith Breathed Hope, Jamie. Thank you guys for listening, and continue to be blessed and bless others. And we'll see you next time. Bye, Jamie.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
And I want to thank you for joining us on Faith Breathed Hope, where you gain inspiration and motivation to renew hope and discover purpose in any circumstance. Please like and share this podcast and give us a review on iTunes. Be blessed.